Bonjour à tous, bonjour à toutes. C'est la troisième fois, pour la troisième année de suite, que nous rendons hommage, que nous accueillons et que nous soutenons le Displacement Film Fund que Cate Blanchett a créé. Et c'est formidable d'avoir eu Cate Blanchett hier comme artiste. Elle a donné avant-hier une masterclass tout à fait formidable, de l'avoir eue comme présidente du jury, ce qui fut tout à fait mémorable en 2018, et puis de la voir chaque année pour qu'elle fasse un petit peu un point avec ses collègues artistes sur cette fondation, sur cette organisation visant à essayer de protéger et de travailler avec les artistes qui sont déplacés ou en exil. Je voudrais qu'on accueille ces invités. La réalisatrice palestinienne Annemarie Jacir, le réalisateur américain Nguyen, le réalisateur Mohammed Amer, la réalisatrice Akuol de Mabior, et la présidente de Displacement Film Fund, Cate Blanchett. Et pour modérer cette discussion, merci d'accueillir Clare Stewart.
Thierry, thank you so much for a wonderful introduction and also for providing us with this opportunity to return to Cannes with an update on the Displacement Film Fund. Welcome, dear media and industry colleagues, Displacement Film Fund partners, and to everyone who is supporting us on this rather remarkable journey. Today, we have the great pleasure, and you've kind of probably worked it out, of introducing the new cohort for the 2026 edition of DFF. We have one missing, and I will come to that shortly. But will you please join me in making everyone very welcome? The DFF is backed by a coalition of leading film industry experts, creators, business leaders, and philanthropists, and was established in 2025 to champion and fund the work of displaced filmmakers or filmmakers with a proven track record in creating authentic storytelling about the experiences of displaced people. Each nominated filmmaker is bestowed with a production grant of €100,000 with their completed short films having their world premiere at the International Film Festival Rotterdam, and in the case of our new cohort in Rotterdam 2027. For the second edition of the fund, we welcome back founding partners, the Amahoro Coalition, Draw Mandat, Mastermind, the Tamer Family Foundation, and Uniqlo, who are newly joined this year for the first time by the SP Loher Foundation as a major partner. IFFR's Hubert Bals Fund returns as the management partner, and UNHCR remains as a very valued strategic partner. Thank you all so much for the representatives of the partners for being here today. Your investment, your collaboration and support is extremely meaningful to us. Before I formally introduce Cate and this year's recipients, an update on the films supported by the 2025 pilot edition of the fund. The new works by Marina Ergorbach, Mo Haraway, Hassan Katan, Mohammed Rasulov, and Shahbanu Sadat had their world premieres at IFFR in 2026 and were met with sold-out audiences, wide acclaim, including a 5-star review, thank you very much, Peter Bradshaw, in The Guardian. And I'm very proud, on behalf of all the colleagues in the fund, to be able to share with you here in Cannes, where Japan is the country of honour in Marché du Film this year, that the inaugural collection will screen at the Tokyo International Film Festival in October. And we're also very thrilled to have secured a theatrical screening at the New York's Film Forum. And thank you, Tabitha.
Tabitha just walked in.
And as well as, of course, introducing these films to the US audiences, this will also help qualify the films for Academy Award consideration. So today we are joined by 4 of the 5 filmmakers who are recipients of this year's award. So Annemarie Jacir, Bals Nguyen, Mohammed Amer, and Akuol de Mabior. The one who is missing is Rithy Panh, who is no stranger to Cannes audiences and critics. So let me fill you in a little bit on each of the filmmakers. Annemarie Jacir is a Palestinian filmmaker, writer and producer whose films have premiered in Berlin, in Venice, Cannes, Locarno and Toronto. All 4 of her feature films have also been the Palestine entry for the Academy Awards. And that includes her most recent and very ambitious film, Palestine 36. Her celebrated 2008 film, Salt of the Sea, was the first film to be shot by a Palestinian woman director and her second work to debut here in Cannes. Bao is a Vietnamese-American filmmaker. He recently produced The Dream is a Snail, the first Vietnamese short film to be selected in competition here in Cannes, which will have its premiere screening on Friday. His directorial work includes the Emmy-nominated The Stringer, which premiered at Sundance, Be Water, about cultural icon Bruce Lee, The Greatest Night in Pop History, which won a PGA Award and Critics' Choice Award, and most recently, BTS, The Return. The co-founder and next to Bao, the co-founder and leader of the Displacement Film Fund, actor and producer Cate Blanchett, who needs very little introduction at all, and who joins us fresh off her rendezvous session here in Cannes yesterday. And I do want to note that on Friday, Cate recognised a decade of service supporting the essential work of UNHCR, the UN's refugee agency, as Goodwill Ambassador. Mohammed Amer is an award-winning Palestinian-American comedian, writer and director. He is currently starring in 2 seasons of the acclaimed Netflix series Mo. A semi-autobiographical story, Mo was named one of the best shows of 2022 and 2025 by the New York Times and Times Magazine, amongst others. The series also garnered a Gotham Award. Should I read them all out? The Peabody Award.
Why not? Yeah, go for
nomination, AFI Honours, the Television Academy Honour. So we're really thrilled, Mo, to have you with us. And Akuol is a South Sudanese filmmaker who grew up in Kenya, was born in Cuba, alongside her award-winning feature documentary, No Simple Way Home, which was the first South Sudanese film to be selected for the Berlinale. She's also made 4 short films. She's motivated by her strong belief in the perspectives that African women are undervalued, and she aims to create stories for the screen that reach African audiences and encourage a renewed African imagination. Unable to be with us today, and that's because he's already getting started, is in Cambodia for that, is Rithy Panh, an internationally acclaimed filmmaker, writer, producer, whose work has profoundly shaped contemporary world cinema through its exploration of memory, trauma, and the legacy of the Khmer Rouge regime. Panh's films have premiered and received major awards here in Cannes, Venice, and at Berlinale too. His 2013 film, The Missing Person, won the Uncertain Regard Prize here in Cannes and went on to be Oscar nominated. So I think a huge round of applause for this extraordinary cohort of filmmakers. Cate, I'm going to start with you. For those in the room who are not yet familiar with the fund, could you elaborate a little bit on its urgency and purpose and share with us what motivated you to bring together this coalition of partners to realise such a project, and perhaps also the impact of seeing the first 5 films produced in this scheme premiere earlier this year.
Yes, thank you, Claire. And I want to add my great thanks to Terry and the festival for having us for the last 3 years, first to discuss the issues of displacement, last year to launch the fund and the filmmakers, and now to be back again. It's very, very important. As we know, for all filmmakers, displaced or otherwise, these forums are of vital importance to discuss the issues that are swirling around us. But yes, as you mentioned, I've been a Goodwill Ambassador for UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, for the last 10 years, which has been one of the most eye-opening and profound privileges of my life. And in that time, I've travelled extensively with them from places like Bangladesh to Brazil to Niger, South Sudan, many different places. And I felt my role was to put a human face on the overwhelming numbers of displacement. It's always surprised and bewildered me that one of the greatest challenges that we face as a species, apart from anthropogenic climate change, human displacement, and there's a crossover with those two things, of course, is that they're not really central to the narratives, even backgrounded into the narratives that we tell, that we write about, but certainly the narratives that we put on screen. And so just over 2 years ago, a group of us, and some Koji's here, and Isaac's here, and Ayman, we were at the Global Refugee Forum, and we made a pledge that we wanted to help champion and scaffold and mainstream the stories of displaced artists. For people in displacement, you don't stop being the profession that you are, whether you're a plumber or an architect or a filmmaker, but your career gets put on hold. And as a result, those stories don't get told. And so we swirled around, and then I met Claire. It was great, fortuitous reconnection at the London Film Festival, and then got involved with IFFR. And very quickly, this, like all good ideas, urgent ideas, it started to take form very quickly, and here we are with the second cohort. But I mean, the time that I've been working with UNHCR, when I started, the numbers of people internally and externally displaced was around 60 million. It's now 117 million and rising. So the crisis is there, and the numbers are dehumanizing, actually, often. So it was very important to us to not, I mean, there's many programs around the world who support filmmaking as a therapeutic process, but we felt what we wanted to do was highlight and support the work of established filmmakers and get them into the mainstream. So that was the why. And when they were screened at Rotterdam in January, February, I always forget when Rotterdam.
January.
Thank you. January this year, which is just a heartbeat ago, we could not have hoped for a better suggestion, which just really underscored for me the fact that this very, very polarizing rhetoric that we get, politicized rhetoric that we get around these issues, these stories, these people, these lives, is really not true, because the audiences they exploded, and the conversation in the foyer afterwards was so engaged and heartfelt. And what was interesting, I think, for all of us involved, was that each of the films stood with their own merit as individual works of cinema, but when you saw them together as a cohort, they had a superpower. And so we were very excited to try and move to a legacy fund. So I really must thank our partners for getting us here, and the hope is that this long may continue. And I couldn't be more excited to meet you guys in person. We've been talking, and your submissions and your ideas are just wildly exciting. So I can't wait for audiences to see them. And you better get going, because they've got to be delivered by January.
No pressure.
One
of the filmmakers is not even here, is he?
But also, I just wanted to quickly say that why a short film? And I think for any filmmaker, and I'd love to hear what you guys think, it's often a place where you get the freedom to experiment. And often short films have the most sort of wild, technical, visual, and narrative forms of invention within them. And so I think it's reinvigorated my love of this particular form of cinematic storytelling.
Wonderful. Annemarie.
No pressure at all.
Yeah, and definitely no pressure. Annemarie, firstly, really warmest congratulations on the success of Palestine 36. Yeah. That extraordinary lyrical epic production had a 10-year journey, a very difficult journey that was halted since it was intended to be filmed in Palestine. In contrast, for DFF, as Cate mentioned, you're going to be going into something much more short and free in a way, and also with a very restrictive timeline on it. And, reading your treatment, it's just very alive to what is happening right now, but takes a very intimate kind of approach to that. So I'm interested to hear what it means for you to move from such a large-scale production to your work for the Displacement Film Fund.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's really such an honor to be part of this fund and this group of artists and the ones before, and to be part of a project that is really about supporting the voices that exist within communities that we don't often hear from. And for me, to move from something like Palestine 36, 10 years I love the pressure of this deadline. I work well under pressure. I think I don't know any other way to work at this point. But freedom of being able to explore anything, which is a challenge in itself, but it's the best challenge. And not to have sort of any sort of constraints. And for the film, I'll be working with a very small team. Palestine 36 was hundreds of people, and it was a displaced film. And then we came back to Palestine because I said, we're not gonna. I reject being displaced. I reject being a refugee film. And so there was a lot happening. And now I'm going to shoot something in the city that I live in right now, which is a city of the city of Haifa, which was 95% of its people were displaced in 1948, and I am one of the few who I have the privilege to be there. Mo and I this morning stood on the balcony and had a very Palestinian moment, I have to say. They got us up this morning quite early, and we had coffee, and he was looking at the sea, and I think this is a lot about who we are. Like to have this moment because we always look at that sea, and it's our sea too, the Mediterranean, and it's something that we have been severed from, and it was actually a very small, simple moment, but it reminded me so much. The first time I came to Cannes, I came with a team of Palestinians that had not seen the sea in 15 years, and they spent the entire festival looking at the sea, actually. So I've taken your question in another direction. Yeah. I'm excited to do this. Thank you.
Bao, amongst your widely acclaimed documentary work is The Stringer, which, congratulations, because it just received 4 Emmy nominations in the news and documentary category. And this film is about the true ownership of a photographic image that many of us know very well, a photo referred to as the terror of war, which shows the really horrific results of napalm on a young girl. And you were born shortly after your parents fled to America. and as refugees. And how much did that sort of displacement and the legacy of that displacement influence you as a person, but also creatively as a filmmaker, and lead to the sort of story that you've chosen to tell for the Displacement Film Fund?
Yeah, I mean, I have a long answer to that, but I won't give the long answer. I mean, Cate mentions like the idea that like plumbers and architects, people had lives before that they left when they came to a new country, and I was going to become a lawyer for a long time because I think sometimes you feel like you have to repay the debt that a certain generation sacrificed when they left, and but over time, I was thinking of becoming a lawyer the day that I was supposed to take my LSAT. I wonder if my parents know this story. It's going to be announced to them right now. Where I was like, I don't want to do that. I've always had a passion for cinema, and I just had this sort of memory where, my father, when he came to America, he had to become a janitor, and but he opened up a small business with my mom, and they would come home late from work, and after work they'd come home for dinner, and my dad would take out a notepad and he would sketch on this notepad. And one day, my sister and I huddled around him and looked what he was drawing. And he was doing these architectural designs. And he said, if I never left Vietnam, I always had dreamt of being an architect. And so, he had given me it was a narrow path at that time to follow my passion for the arts, but he still gave that path. And my parents and my sister gave that path by leaving Vietnam, after 6 tries and being on a boat for 2 weeks and being in a refugee camp. So by honoring their memory or their sacrifice by becoming something I didn't want to do, or because they've carved this path for me to be a filmmaker, that was my honor in repaying them. And I'm so honored and fortunate to be in this cohort and the support of all the partners of Cate to tell the story that I've held for a long time, a story about shame and the life that you leave behind and the life that you want to leave for your children and the next generation. But because you're trying to, adapt to a new homeland, adapt to all these new cultures, you kind of carry these things silently for a long time. So I'm very grateful and privileged to be able to use the form of cinema to tell the story.
Thank you. Mo, I know it's been Cate's ambition, actually, since we embarked on establishing DFF, that the grant program really embraces all genres of filmmaking. And we've been very mindful in our selection to date to make a balance in this regard. And I think for me, the creative brilliance of your Netflix series is that it's both playful and serious at the same time. And you're alternating between really hilarious scenes and a deeply moving account of a Palestinian family endeavouring to navigate what it means to be stateless for over 20 years. It's both comedy kind of as a form of survival, I would say, as well as a means for communicating more universally. And so I want to ask you about that approach, because I also see that echoed in your treatment for the new film, and how important is it for you to kind of create that balance?
Yeah, it's always, first of all, thank you, and I feel like I'm echoing everybody here. Clearly a privilege to be up here, and really I think about not only doing this, but leaving something behind for future filmmakers to follow in as well. To have 2 Palestinians up here is really just like strange for me. It's like really also very comforting at the same time. So thank you. For me, it's always been like a defense mechanism. It's kind of like how I adapt to different environments. So fleeing war in Kuwait, and very similarly, my father was a telecommunications engineer in Kuwait to help develop the first wireless communication between oil rigs, built the first radio station in Kuwait, and then he ended up owning a 99-cent store in Houston. So it was one of those things that you constantly are adapting to your environment. And I found myself pretty regularly when I get into uncomfortable situations or sad situations, I would immediately go to the comedy. So it's just a natural balance for me in my life, and it has converted into film and television for me. So it's just, to me, it's like the best balance, right? You can't have too much of one thing. It's like, really, you can't have drama without some comedy. You can't have comedy with some drama. It's that. But that's how I assimilated. That's how I really, helped take the edge off when I really embarrassed myself as a little kid in Houston, Texas, of all places, when I moved from the Gulf War in Kuwait, born to Palestinian parents. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I was hoping to be a lot funnier, to be honest with you. It just didn't really work out.
What, your show or your moment
No,
here?
just now. I thought we'd have more interaction. Everybody
That's
just
because I
sitting
asked you a
staring at
really
you.
serious question.
No, it's fine. 3 people walked out. I wanted to
me.
shame them. You know what I mean? I'm like, where are you going? Cate Blanchett's here. What's the matter with you? You know?
Akuol, there's a very terrible and worsening humanitarian situation in Sudan right now, the largest displacement crisis of our time, with over 14 million people displaced inside and outside Sudan. And of course, that also is impacting South Sudan, and there are challenges within South Sudan as well. You have a very unique personal story as the daughter of 2 major figures who shaped the destiny of South Sudan, a subject that you explored, I think, to deeply moving and affecting results in your documentary No Simple Way Home. For your DFF project, you're returning to the mother-daughter dynamic, but this time in a fictional construct, and I'm really curious to know. Given these challenging circumstances, what your hopes are for the film, and also how the Displacement Film Fund supports in such a context.
Yeah. So first, to also echo and say what an honor it is to be here and to be a part of this cohort, and how important it is what you're doing with the Displacement Film Fund, or what we will be doing as part of the Displacement Film Fund. My short film is born of a memory of fleeing Sudan with my sister just before this recent war broke out. And we were there, we were supposed to be there briefly, and we're very lucky to get out. I don't see our experience as representative, and I hope that in telling the story, it will not be a representative story, but a story that helps us to multiply and forces people to talk about what's going on, and to look into more stories. We need to hear more stories from people. And in terms of the mother-daughter dynamic, I'm obsessed with the idea of mothers as custodians of history, who create objects and are like archivists in a family. So that's part of one of the themes, and also how war unleashes an immense unraveling. Yeah.
No, it's one of the things that I think we had an extraordinary experience of with the films of the first cohort was identifying, of course, after they were made, these resonances that went through each of those films, which kind of spoke to each other without without an intention or without any planning, as Cate kind of touched on earlier in her response. And I really already am enjoying just going, with Tamara and Vanya, the treatments that we see on the page. We're already anticipating what some of those resonances might be. But I think it's really important to also underscore that the filmmakers are, making their work in creative freedom and also in the containment of their own sort of trajectory. We are going to come to the floor for questions, so if you do have any, please put up your hand, and the team will make sure that the microphone reaches you. Cate, I'm going to come back to you, and you were, it feels very strange to even suggest that you could celebrate in one way being 10 years ambassador for UNHCR. You would kind of hope that after 10 years the situation was not worsening. But I'm kind of interested in how your experience of also really being out in the on the ground in some of these in some refugee camps, and also the kind of ambassadorial role you're taking, how that really informed where we've landed with the sort of definition of the fund.
In the sense of the types of stories that I heard. Well, I think when we talk about what makes a good story, it seemed to be contained within the myriad of stories that I heard. I mean, the amount of laughter, the hope, the resilience, but also the journeys that these people had made were inherently dramatic. And if you took the refugee asylum seeker component out of it, those stories would probably be told. And I realised that there was a kind of a prejudice or a fear around the labelling of those people. And of course, as we all know, there's human faces behind those labels. And I felt that there's an openness, I think, when people come into a cinema, or when they open up whatever platform they're watching at home, that they allow themselves to surrender into a story. There's an open-hearted quality. When you open a novel, you're on going to read an adventure that's outside your own experience. And I think when we open ourselves up to those narratives, we realise that we have much more in common with the characters in that book, with the director, the writer, the crews that make those and tell those stories than perhaps we first realised. And I think our sense of ourselves gets expanded by engaging with those stories. So I felt that was that we could do that in our own small way with this fund. On top of which, these extraordinary filmmakers need support. And I think that by supporting, I wish we could support 20 filmmakers. There's so many extraordinary stories to be told. But it's about supporting them, I think, to get those things out in an unfettered free way. Every artist wants freedom, and every refugee wants freedom. And every refugee and asylum seeker wants, hope. And what I've found is when you give someone a small amount of resources, what they do with it, because of their incredible resilience, it pays back tenfold. So I think that was made clear too by the work of last year's cohort. They were, really surprising and beyond our wildest expectations.
Thank you. We'll go to the gentleman over here.
Yeah, Lazar Chrismo from BNR Radio Bulgaria. I have a question for Ms. Blanchett in relation to the Displacement Film Fund. A displaced person, I can say that it's a person who is without its independence, it's without its freedom to his or her homeland. And in that relation, behind you, there's Thelma and Louise from the film by Ridley Scott. They also lost, in a way, they were trying to find an independence, a new kind of freedom, and that's why they left their husbands. And in the contemporary world that we're living in, do you think, where can we find now what is freedom and independence? And actually, the question is more, is it only freedom and independence, can we say a statement or words to achieve something, to achieve freedom and independence, or we need more than a statement, more than just words and demonstrations in our world right now, in the reality? Yes,
if I understand your question correctly, is it what will produce genuine freedom? Yes, I think engagement in the societies in which we live is of vital importance to ensuring long-lasting freedom. And so protests, community activities, countering xenophobic narratives and points of view when you come across them, those small actions do add up. I think what we could do at our own family level, our own community level, is really important to not only sort of trying to pave the way for freedom for other people, but for ourselves. I think when we engage in those fear-based narratives, we lock ourselves up, you know. And so I think that that's something that we're not really alive to. It affects everybody, you know. And I part of what drove me to want to engage in the really important, vital work of UNHCR was as an Australian, when I could see that offshore processing in Manus and Nauru was happening, and it was off the national narrative. And I noticed over a 20-year period that our national character was calcifying, that the brand Australia that I grew up with, which was multicultural, a welcoming embrace, it was colonial invasion notwithstanding, it was positively built on waves and waves and waves of Vietnamese, Italian, Greek, Cambodian, refugees, and the country was better for it. And we were closing that down to our own detriment. And so I think that our own sense of intellectual, spiritual, moral freedom was in peril because we were locking ourselves up and leaning into fear-based narratives. So I think those things are really important. And while we wait for political solutions, which seems very, very far off, I think it's up to each and every one of us to do what we can, because those small actions, I don't want to sound too Pollyanna-ish, but they do add up.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bianca Vettacci from Italy Zeta Luis, and I have a question for everyone, also Cate, if she wants to answer. As working on the Displacement Film Fund changed the way you personally think about concepts like home or national identity or belongings? Thank you.
Who would like to go first? Mo, you look ready.
I know, and I'm thinking I have so many things swirling in my mind. First of all, this is not completely how we identify. I must have to say this, you know. It's really, really important. And for me, like, telling that story was crucial, telling a Palestinian story about a Palestinian family living in Houston, what they do, you know, and how they even function in a society where they don't even have any paperwork or living behind the immigration wall, was really important, because most people thought, like, you get to the States and this is the idea, like in America, you get there and like, oh, they're gonna get their citizenship right away. No, it's actually a really long process, an arduous process. And for me, the feeling of belonging and home is all you want. You want to be accepted in wherever you are, where you exist in the world. And now, you know, Houston is really, really an incredible place for me. And that's why I shot the whole show there, is because it's the most diverse city in America. And it has been fully accepting of who I am and my family. But the obstacles of what it takes to finally become a U.S. citizen and actually feel like you're officially home is never really there, to be honest. Although I'm an American citizen, there is a gaping hole in my heart, and that's what informs my art form. That's the stories that I want to tell, because I can see quite clearly around me that nobody really knows what being an Arab is, what being Palestinian is, what being Muslim is. Like, they have no idea. So it became really, really important for me to shape my stand-up in that way, to inform people, and to additionally have a series on Netflix that shows a completely different perspective, but yet humanizing it in a really powerful way, where you see just a family together. And we were talking about this earlier, and it was really by design. And my mom and my brother are some of my biggest inspiration. My family is, and my mom and what she did to overcome, to even get to Houston itself, and the sacrifices that she has done over her entire life is quite extraordinary. And I can never pay her back. I can never pay them back. So this is my little way of sharing something that's so intimate, that is so real, that is so personal, that can relate to many people around the world. And that's what it's done. And in this form, you know, in the short film form, I feel like, you know, although it's a television series, I shot it very intentionally, like a two-part, you know, film. And the last episode of season 2 was essentially an hour-long foreign film, until I had to cut it down to 38 minutes. So it's just something that, you know, I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to put it together, and I feel like it's really, really important to get these stories out there and to make sure to inform as many people as possible and to humanize them as well. Because once you say refugees, asylees, you just get these images that you see in the news, like people on boats trying to get there. There's no real faces to it. There's no background to it. You don't really, it's not humanizing at all. So it's really, really important to bridge that gap in that way.
And I think it breaks down that notion, you know, and no one wants to be labeled. I mean, you know, I don't think about, for instance, I don't think about my gender until someone reminds me of it or closes a door to me because of it. And I think that, you know, watching your series, you know, I have no cultural reference to the world in which you grew up with, but yet I saw my own family dynamics in there. And I think that that's the power of cinematic storytelling, is that it reminds us of what connects us rather than what divides us.
I could just listen to Cate the whole time. I mean, I don't know why we're talking. I just hear her speak, and I'm like, yes, please continue.
Akuol, I might ask you also to address the same question, because your film No Simple Way Home is really about this very question. It's very central to this question, so maybe...
Yeah, for sure. And there's something you said that just hit me, that you may never resolve this where is home. I think there might be a need to make peace with the fact that you will never completely feel at home. If you've been displaced, and that's not, I mean, the tragedy in that is something that perhaps we can live with the fact that we may never have a complete sense of home, and also what you said about feeling like there's something missing. I think we have to make peace with that fact. I think that was the conclusion that I came to at the end of the film. There was a sense of, I need to find what is home to me. That was the question that I went in with. But came out realizing that I am capable of making peace with the fact that I may never have that. Like South Sudanese people, we have like a massive diaspora. People who feel extremely connected to South Sudan, but have never been there, speak their mother tongue, but grew up in Australia, for example, is a place where we have a massive diaspora. And but you ask them where's home, they'll say South Sudan, but they've never been there. You know, so what does it mean to make peace with the fact that you might have to live your whole life not feeling totally at home?
Yeah, and that's the reality of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say too, like, I'm speaking from my own experience, having parents who fled Vietnam, like living in this liminal space of being Vietnamese and also American. You know, ironically, my parents who lived in America for 40 years, they both returned to Vietnam. So they have this same yearning that I think many people do. And there's you know, a beauty in that yearning, I think, in many ways, of not like always searching for home and finding home in the present moment and with the people you are at the time, rather than thinking it's sort of this rival fallacy that when you find this home, then you're going to be happy. And maybe it's just because I'm like a glutton for punishment or an artist, where I love that sense of yearning, and I'm privileged to transform it into something that's quite positive when there are many people who don't have that privilege in many ways. And I think, this was an interesting sort of assignment in a way to make a film as, you know, a part of a community, a displaced community, but not having to make the film about displacement. And what does that mean? Because I think just through our existence and our creation of work, it becomes thematically about that in every way, instead of having to emphasize or underline it. So I'm a type of artist who doesn't like a blank canvas, because it's too much sort of agency. I like to be challenged in a way where I can be a filmmaker and give me this prompt, and then I will make something creative based on that sort of framework.
Annemarie, I'd like to also come to you on the same topic, really, or the same question. And you know, one of the things that I think is so profound and compelling about Palestine 36 is this is you. You know, making an incredibly epic kind of address to the world, really, to like understand, in a way, the history of Palestine and a home that is no longer a home that can be held onto. So how does this question sort of shape you creatively and your decision to make such a film?
It's an epic film, but it's so intimate for me. That's how I think about it. It's from the smallest stories that I want to tell to a story like Palestine 36. What I'm interested in is intimacy and personal, the private story, the story between a mother and her daughter, a father and his son. This community that I'm part of. And being part of something like this, like the Displacement Fund, we're simply telling the stories that are in our hearts, that are close to us. And I think that's something very important to say. Nobody likes labels, exactly. But everything, like I often get asked by journalists, can you imagine yourself doing something not political one day, like a story that's not political, like, your other work is all political, but it's like, none of it is political and all of it is political. And like the gentleman pointed out, this is, Thelma and Louise is, political. There's nothing that isn't. What I think all of us have in common here is, and it's the same as everybody in this audience who's a storyteller, is that it's simply, we are telling the stories in our hearts. And in the world we live in, unfortunately, right now, it gets placed under that's a political story, and this one isn't. Sorry, this one is, and this one isn't, or that one is. It's. I think that's something. I hope that will be broken. That because we're telling the stories that we want, it's not considered threatening or political, or it doesn't even represent our communities.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really difficult. Story. Excuse me. This is really difficult when your existence becomes political, right?
Yeah.
When you just being yourself is political and is politicized, I should say. So that I refuse to accept it for me personally, and I look at it as human-to-human interactions and having logical conversations and seeing the other person as a human being and having these discussions openly. And that's what's so beautiful about art. You're able to make whatever story you want and create a body of work, and you'll be judged on that body of work. And I wanted that to be criticized, not to be as you just existing as yourself. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, even whenever I do a show or something like that, the headline will be Palestinian American Muslim comedian. I'm like, what is all this? Can it just be comedian Mo Amer? It'll never be that way. It's just the way the world is currently operating. And so hopefully over time that will dissipate.
Thank you. I think I had a question over here.
Hello. First of all, this moment means a lot to me. Kate, I'm usually looking at a poster of Tar on my wall in my room in Beirut. I'm Lebanese, and in 2024, you voiced your support for the opening of the Metropolis Cinema in Beirut. And I want to thank you for supporting the film culture in the Middle East. And seeing you show this support means a lot to me as an aspiring filmmaker, especially having 2 Palestinian filmmakers on the panel today, which is very inspiring. And what I wanted to say is, usually as a Lebanese filmmaker, Middle Eastern people are very resilient and always finding ways to push through adversity and tell stories that reflect who we are. So my question is, what qualities does the fund look for when supporting these displaced filmmakers? And are there specific points that you prioritize in these beautiful stories? What do you look for mostly? And thank you, shukran.
Well, firstly, I hope your family's safe. It's a very difficult time for everybody. It's a rigorous 2-step process that we've had. And last year was a pilot program, and so a lot of learnings we've received from that. We're a very small outfit, and so we decided very early on that we couldn't throw it open to widely to sort of open submissions. My partner Coco Franchini and I, along with the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, had a fund that did have open submissions for trans, non-binary and female filmmakers, but this was a different enterprise. So we have a selection committee, a nomination committee and a selection committee. And given the wealth of talent out there of filmmakers, not only who are displaced, but filmmakers who might be alive to the issues of displacement, it was very important that we keep both of those elements alive, because obviously if you are second or third generation, and you may have born in say America, or you may have been born in England, but your parents were not, and they have made arduous journeys to provide you with the life that you have, then those traumas and those issues do get passed down. So yes, it was a long and quite fast and furious process. But like last year, we had a Ukrainian, an Afghani, Somalian filmmaker. There were no Palestinians last year. Just
Syrian
filmmaker Hassan Katan. So it was just the way it panned out, and also that their work is not based necessarily on where they come from. It's the quality of them as filmmakers, and I think that's really, really important to remember.
And also, maybe to expand on that slightly, we really were looking at how do we establish, the point that Cate made earlier in the panel, how are we supporting established filmmakers? Because that is also something that can really get forgotten in the notion that people are already in a working context which can get disrupted. But also, I think we're really looking to, how can we create within each cohort a really diverse forms of storytelling, and that's something that Hubert Bals Fund has been supporting for more than 30 years with our core fund. I think there's something really compelling about what it means to start as, and if I may speak from the point of view of IFFR as an organisation, how do you take an action in this moment? What can you do in this moment? And being management partner of Displacement Film Fund is one of the things that we can do. Being a founding member with IFFR and the European Film Academy of ICFR, the International Coalition for Filmmakers at Risk, is another thing we can do. And this year in Cinemart, we also introduced a new program called Safe Harbour to support emerging talent who are having projects that are ready to bring to market, but who may not and are in a stateless or displaced situation, and who may not, because of that, have the support to kind of usher them into the industry in a sense. So, I think there's also a real, what would certainly given us a real sense of purpose around what actions can you take in current climate that will have positive impact and really, we hope transform the cinematic landscape at the same time.
Yeah, and I think it's an ecosystem. So the filmmaking community, international filmmaking community. So we were identifying what parts we felt what holes could we fill. There's always more you can do, and film has a very powerful therapeutic process, and there are a lot of funds that are there to support that type of work. But we felt that we wanted to do something. There was a hole that we could sort of work effectively in a different way.
I'm just going to take one last question over here.
I'm Leila from Getty News. It's French exiled media. We're the only ones in France who do this, meaning half of our newsroom is constituted of refugee journalists from around the world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But
cool.
I guess my question here, you've already answered a bit of it, but I'll dive straight into it, is money. It's becoming increasingly hard to tell these stories, these trajectories. These people who work with us, they work with us, we can't pay them. Because it's becoming very hard now just to be a journalist as it is. But to be talking about migration and putting a face on trajectories, nobody seems to care about it. We're offering trainings for free, but mainstream media don't even send their journalists to attend. They just don't want to see it. And you probably heard in Cannes, since the festival opened, there was 600 people in the cinema world who signed this paper because of Canal Plus being, the owner of Canal Plus is Mr. Vincent Bolloré, who doesn't like to talk about migration in a nice way. Displaced people, that's not his thing. Or it is his thing, but to
Hell of a finale question, I gotta tell you.
Yeah. So for us now, we know we exist, we're here, but there is a very heavy counterpower when we talk about refugees and displaced people. It's very present and it's very strong. And a lot of people who tell these stories are also being harassed online a lot. It happens all the time. Any inspiration from you, you're already doing a great job with the fund, and thank you for all the spots you just cited here. But any inspiration for people like us here in France, at least, who are trying to make these voices heard, but have an extremely hard time having access to funds, and most of the time it means the stories get untold, and people who want to say it keep saying it for free and can't make a living out of it. Thank you.
What's the question?
Oh, sorry. Inspiration.
Yeah. I thought it was... No, the
Yeah.
Any kind of advice or inspiration on how we can go beyond this counterpower, which is overwhelming at times and makes us feel very insecure.
Mm. I wish we had all the answers to that question.
It's tough. Yeah.
I can just say from my own personal experience is that the only thing that I could find like peace in and really is just focusing on my craft. I know it sounds like, but truly like focusing on my craft and being the best at my craft, and that got me into the spaces to elevate to the next level. And for me, doing stand-up or getting into filmmaking, unfortunately, wasn't really about money or anything else. It was about the art form and telling the stories. So I also knew that just making sure that I elevated within my craft brought in the ability to have access to funds, because I've elevated in that way, and through that perseverance, things do work out. So it's no good answer. I'm just saying that that's the only way that I've been able to push through, is that just focusing on what I need to do and not listening to comments and things online and this and that. It's really a massive distraction, and it seems like it's a very sensitive thing to talk about here. But truly it's just focusing on your own lane and making sure to persist and push through and move forward, and hopefully we can all progress together.
And it sounds like what you're doing is, it sounds inspiring to me, what you're doing, you know. And Annemarie was talking about, boxes or being distilled into categories, or everybody actually has mentioned that nobody wants to be diminished and like forced into categories of what people expect you should look like, and, how you should talk, or if you should be quiet because this is your category and you must stay inside. So the thing we do is, we don't stay inside those categories, and we keep explaining that we exist beyond these categories, and there's generosity, I think, in storytelling. People don't expect as much that you just fit in this one category. So I think what we need to do for each other is to extend that generosity. Like, don't just expect one thing or two things or just these three boxes that people need to be. And you're doing that work, it sounds like.
But I'll also answer your question on a sort of more structural level as well, because I hear the resource question in there. And I think it's good to also reflect on the very unique kind of collaboration that Cate has sort of brought together of individuals, of philanthropists, and the corporate support also of Uniqlo. And one of the things that has been a privilege for me in working with those partners to realise this project is to understand that these are people who are supporting because they do hear and recognise these stories. They do understand the value and want to support that value. And in the context of Uniqlo, they have a more than 20-year commitment to working in the corporate social responsibility, sustainability space. And so it's also, I think, this collaboration is very unique for the film world, actually, to be having 5 philanthropic foundations from different countries, all of them, and a corporate partner. And to be working in a way collaboratively together that helps realise that shared goal. And that's, for me, a different way of doing business, shall we say, in the film industry, and gives me hope that when I hear your situation, that you can also identify people who will come around your project. And I really wish you every luck.
Yeah, all hail to you. I mean, there's a lot of, groups who are doing, very important work. Because, of course, there's a very big difference between being a journalist and a propagandist. And it's oftentimes, I think, that these small groups who are doing things that are floundering and are exhausted, as no doubt you are, that if they band together, there can be, the Venn diagram of what they're doing in a similar way, and where those smaller groups can support one another, I think they grow in strength. It's the mycelium sort of way of working, I think.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And
Thank you.
Warm congratulations again to all our filmmakers and to Rithy.